Hallie.
Sure. Senator Graham said today on the immigration discussions that he thought that the president was on track to come to a deal with him and Senator Durbin up to 2 hours before last week's immigration Oval Office meeting on Thursday. He says something happened between 10 and 12. He says the president got bad advice from his staff members, potentially including Stephen Miller, potentially including John Kelly. What happened in those 2 hours? What changed? Is Stephen Miller running the show now? What's going on?
Hardly. So to be very clear, the president's running the show here at the White House, and look, I was part of this process and part of the conversations that went on. The president simply, as he looked at the deal, he wants a good deal and he wants the right deal. He laid out what his priorities were, what needed to be included in any piece of legislation, and this simply failed to address the things that were laid out. Specifically, one of the areas that really fell short was the funding for border security. They only put in about 1/10 of what the Department of Homeland Security said they needed. Not what they said they wanted, but what they said they needed. And this was simply a complete failure in terms of a good deal based on what the president had laid out and based on what he wanted to see in a piece of legislation. Hopefully we get there. We're still going to continue working with members, both Republicans and Democrats, House and Senate members, to try to make a deal on DACA and make sure that we include those components that the president very clearly has laid out. Cecilia. Sorry, I'm going to hop around today since we're on short time frame.
Just picking up on what you just left off on. So does a good deal include then preferring white immigrants from Norway than black and brown immigrants from Haiti?
Not at all. In fact, it's actually the opposite, because by definition, a merit-based system is colorblind. It's not basing it on any of that criteria. It's not based on race. It's not based on religion. It's not based on country of origin. It's actually based on the merits of whether or not this person's going to be contributing to society. So actually, it erases all of those things and makes it a much more fair system instead of picking and choosing from trying to meet different quotas of different things. It's a merit-based system, and frankly, it's a system that most Democrats supported and voted for just years ago, but now that this president is championing it, they are, I think, showing just absolute signs and definitions of what hypocrisy looks like. Look, the bottom line is we want a deal on DACA. They want a deal on DACA. We want a deal on border security. They want a deal on border security. They've said that they support these things. They've also said in the past that they support merit-based immigration. I don't see what is complicated here. We all want the same things. Democrats need to quit playing politics and start doing what they were elected to do, and that is governing. And they need to come to the table with a real deal based on the parameters that were discussed in the meeting that most of you saw, and let's try to get something done for the American people.
But he did mention country of origin, and the fact of the matter is the countries that he mentioned, one is very white and the others are very not white. So that is about race, is it not?
No, it's not. And again, the president has laid out what he wants to see in an immigration process, and that is a merit-based system. You cannot argue with the priority that he has laid out and what that looks like and how it actually levels the playing field and is the opposite of what you're suggesting. Go ahead.
In that meeting, the president reportedly used a vulgarity. The White House has said he did not use that specific word. The president has said that as well, but a number of people in the administration said he used tough language, rough language, strong language. Can you clear up once and for all what the president did say?
Look, I wasn't in that room, so I can go only off of what the individuals who were. They said that term wasn't used, but that tough language was. Look, no one here is going to pretend like the president is always politically correct. He isn't. I think that's one of the reasons the American people love him. One of the reasons that he won and is sitting in the Oval Office today is because he isn't a scripted robot. He's somebody who tells things like they are sometimes, and sometimes he does use tough language. The point that he's trying to make, the point that the entire conversation frankly should be focused on, is the issue at hand. We've wasted 5 days fighting over one word when we should be fighting over the people that are involved in the DACA program. If Democrats really want to protect these individuals, that's who they should be fighting for, and that's what they should be fighting about, is figuring out a permanent solution to DACA, not a quick fix, figuring out how to secure our border and increase border security, figuring out how to end chain migration, figuring out how to end the visa lottery system. They're wasting time, yet complaining about the fact that this president isn't doing enough when he's the only one that's really engaging in this process, and hopefully they'll get on board, get out of the way, and start actually doing their job.
Can you explain, because I think this is still an open question, how did Senators Cotton and Perdue get here to the White House on Thursday? Who invited them?
The president.
Why?
Doesn't seem like an open question to me.
Well, so why did he invite them? I mean, Senators Durbin and Graham wanted to come and present their proposal. Why did the president feel he needed other people in the room?
As the president did, I guess, a few days prior when he had a large group of people here, the president wanted to have multiple people that have been part of this conversation, that have been part of the foundation that they had worked on the days prior to that in the room as part of the discussion. It was a decision he made, and I guess I'm lost on why the president, having two Republican senators who have been in the midst of this entire discussion, continue to be part of the discussion. If anything, I think he should be celebrated for including more voices instead of limiting it to two. He broadened the field and brought additional people into the room, not just those two members, but several others as well. Kristen.
Sarah, thanks. The president again today called the Russian probe a hoax. So why not encourage Steve Bannon to be completely transparent today on Capitol Hill to help with the
No one's
process?
encouraged him to be anything but transparent, but there is a process of what that looks like and what that process should go through.
Holding some,
And
not
that,
answering some questions, right?
look, I can't speak to that. That's something that I would refer to attorneys on that matter, and specifically Steve Bannon's attorneys. Look, we've been completely cooperative throughout this entire process. We're going to continue to be cooperative, but we're also going to maintain some of the executive privileges here at the White House that have been practiced for decades and that need to be maintained. Blake?
Sarah, thanks. To pick up from what Hallie had asked, something clearly had changed between Tuesday when the president said, bring me any deal that you agree to,
But to be clear, he didn't say bring me any deal that two people agree to. He said the people at this table, I'm confident that you will come together and address the situation and the concerns that we have laid out, and that you will answer the call that has been made, and that simply didn't happen in this deal.
Is it simply if you say that they came to you with 1/10 of the border wall funding, that if more money comes to the wall, you've got a DACA deal?
We also want to see an end to chain migration. We want to see an end to the visa lottery system, and we want to see merit-based immigration. So those are the components that we've laid out. The president's viewpoint on this has been consistent. It hasn't changed, but what was reflected in that deal isn't what the president laid out. Jonathan?
Sarah, can you clarify exactly what has been denied here? Because the day of that meeting, Thursday night, the White House put out a statement that did not deny. The president said what was widely reported. You now said we've been spending 5 days talking about one word. Is that the only thing that's being disputed here in this denial? Is which profanity the president used? Do you deny the general characterization? Do you deny that he
I
said
certainly
that?
deny the general characterization. Again, I go back to the fact that sometimes the president does use tough language. I wasn't in the room, so I can only rely off of the individuals that were, and those that have come out and publicly spoken about said they didn't recall those specific phrases being used. Look, the bottom line is the president wants to see a deal done. He wants to protect DACA. He wants to make sure we have increased border security. He wants to see an end to chain migration, an end to the visa lottery system. Those are the priorities. That's our focus, and that's what we're talking about, whether you guys are talking about that or not. I'm going to take one more question. Jill?
I wanted to follow up on Shannon's question there first, and I've got another one. Does the president, do he agree to some type of deal that traded the diversity lottery for making permanent the TPS protections?
I'm not aware of that specific agreement. I'd have to check.
Would he be open, though, to that kind of trade-off?
I'd have to check. I know we've laid out what our priorities look like, and I think it would depend on the entire piece of legislation. I can't speak to just one piece of something that may or may not exist.
And then Secretary Nielsen today was testifying on the Hill, and at one point she said that she was in that meeting, and she said she was surprised by the fact that the folks in that meeting were using such profane language. Is that something that bothers the president at all, and how often does he use that kind of language that we're all talking about?
You'd have to be more specific in terms of, I guess.
Profanities, how often does he?
I mean, has he ever used a word? Probably so, yes. But I don't think, again, that is the basis of what the focus of the meeting was, and certainly not what the focus of the White House has been. I'm going to take one last one because Aisha's been patient.
Thank you. So
Welcome back.
Thank you. I just want to kind of pinpoint, I know this has been talked about, but when you say that the president, he's not politically correct, would the White House then consider if there was some type of derogatory language used to describe Haiti or Africa or the countries of Africa to say that these are not good countries to come from, that's the issue of being
I certainly
politically
can speak
correct?
to my experience. I've never heard him say anything like that or similar to that specifically. I'm talking more generally that sometimes the president can be politically incorrect. I think sometimes you guys have heard him. I wasn't speaking to that moment exactly. I was talking more generally, but I've never heard him make a reference like that, and so certainly can't speak to anything beyond that at this point. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good day.